Pastor Doug Wilson is a self-described Christian nationalist on a mission to make the United States a Christian nation and the entire world a Christian world. Over the decades, he's built an international network of more than 150 churches. And last month, he opened a new one just 3 blocks from Capitol Hill, with the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, attending the service. Pastor Wilson preaches a strict interpretation of the Bible. He believes women should submit to their husbands and not have the right to vote. In his view, abortion and homosexuality are criminal. He's been on the fringes of the religious right for decades, but now finds more of a mainstream Republican audience.
Is America becoming a Christian nationalist nation once again under President Donald Trump? That's what this video is going to address, as this new CNN report just came out earlier today regarding Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and his ties with this Christian nationalist pastor out of Idaho. Now, many will debate this, but it does appear, when you research history thoroughly, that our American country was founded upon Christianity and Christian principles. And these Christian principles have endured throughout the years and the decades and now centuries of America's existence. However, with the somewhat more recent movement of feminism and non-traditional views being hyped up and taught in the public education system over the past couple of decades, the American public seem to have moved away from that, at least for a little bit. Millennials, however, and especially Gen Z, seem to be moving back towards those values over time. This article, titled "New Research, Belief in Jesus Rises, Fueled by Younger Adults," was published earlier this year in April. A new Barna study as part of the State of the Church 2025 initiative shows a groundswell of commitment to Jesus over the last 4 years. According to the latest data, 66% of all U.S. adults say they have made a personal commitment to Jesus that is still important in their life today. That marks a 12 percentage point increase since 2021, when commitment levels reached their lowest in more than 3 decades. This shift is not only statistically significant, it may be the clearest indication of meaningful spiritual renewal in the United States. And you can see, according to this graph here, it looks like things are trending upwards when it comes to belief in Jesus, Christianity, etc. And even in my own personal day-to-day life, I have noticed this when speaking with the Gen Z generation especially, but also with fellow millennials. People do seem to be gravitating more towards religion over time once again. It seems like during the pandemic, things really hit rock bottom for American society in a way that forced a lot of people, while sitting at home in sort of this induced isolation, that they started thinking about life differently and started embracing different values. And I'm going to cover more on those values and how some of them have even become trendy a little bit later in this video. But for now, back to the CNN story.
Christchurch senior pastor Doug Wilson makes no apologies for his beliefs on God and country.
I'd like to see the town be a Christian town. I'd like to see the state be a Christian state. I'd like to see the nation be a Christian nation. And I'd like to see the world be a Christian world.
And now Wilson's controversial views as a Christian nationalist are gaining sway in the nation's center of power, with the recent opening of his new church and high-profile parishioners like Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Is planting a church in D.C. part of your mission to try to turn this into a Christian nation?
Yes.
And so this was part of the trending news today. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is tied in with this pastor and with his church, a pastor who is openly a Christian nationalist. And this should come as no surprise to anybody. These pictures of his tattoos were showed on the floor at the time, with Elizabeth Warren particularly being one of the more outspoken people against Pete Hegseth because of his tattoos. For instance, this is a tattoo that Pete Hegseth proudly has on his chest. That, for most of my audience who might not know, is a tattoo of the Crusades. It is straight up a Crusader symbol. But there are other lesser known tattoos on him, like this tattoo that's on his arm, kafir, which means a non-believer, translating essentially to a non-Muslim. This is the kind of tattoo that makes him actually an enemy of Islam, and he has it displayed on his arm proudly as well. It shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody that Pete Hegseth would be a member of a church like this when he proudly has a ginormous family, according to the information I see out there, where he reportedly has 7 children. So he seems to live the sort of Christian lifestyle that you would expect him to live, with the family elements that he brings and with the certain tattoos that he has on him. Now, back to the CNN report here on this pastor. He does have what would be considered some very, very controversial views when it comes to gender norms, traditional households, and women in general.
So you just think they're meant to have babies? That's it. They're just a vessel.
No, it doesn't take any talent to simply reproduce biologically. The wife and mother, who is the chief executive of the home, is entrusted with 3 or 4 or 5 eternal souls.
I'm here as a working journalist, and I'm a mom of 3.
Good for you.
Is that an issue
No.
for you?
No, it's not automatically an issue.
Now, honestly, what these traditional views sort of remind me of are actually this clip from the Megyn Kelly show that I was just listening to last night, actually, because she just debuted this episode yesterday. And on this episode, towards the end, I was delighted to see that she had a guest on here, Judge Frank Caprio. This is a guy who is widely regarded as the nicest judge in America, who unfortunately I think had to retire very recently due to pancreatic cancer. However, he's still going strong, making content and pushing out all kinds of stuff and talking about his experience as a judge over decades. This guy is very old. He was born, I think, November 24th, 1936. So he has seen a lot. This is the kind of guy that you want to sit down and learn from. And these are his thoughts on how he's seen the American society change after Megyn Kelly outright asked him about this.
Do you feel like, what differences do you see in the country, right? Because it seems like if you were born in 36, then you were graduating high school, around 1954? And we were less populated. We were less overwhelmed, I think, with the number of bodies when we tried to travel and we got on roads. But we were finding each other back then. We had the bowling leagues and we had, parades, and we had like a shared patriotism. I feel like that's all changed so much.
Big changes that I've seen in my lifetime are the breakdown of the family unit. The basic unit of society is the family unit. And that's what youngsters see. That's the first impression that they have when they're born and they're brought into this world. And I think, unfortunately, that the family unit, the substance of the family unit, has broken down over the years. And I think that's a shame.
How important is that, like family dinners and time together and, an intact mother and father unit in the home?
You cannot import the importance of that enough. Just the family unit being together, the togetherness, the love of each other, being together for all major events and enjoying them together is just something that I think is lacking in the world today.
Judge Frank is literally someone I could listen to talk all day. The guy has seen so much of life and is so full of wisdom, and it's excellent to hear his opinion on this. This is the guy that sees the struggles of society because of his position. And his number one criticism of how America has shifted has been shifting away from the nuclear family, the traditional family, and moving away from those values. And so this shouldn't be all that shocking that churches like this are popping up now that are preaching Christian nationalism and traditionalism from within the home and restoring these traditional values in the home once again. There's been a massive divide, and it has had, in my opinion, a terrible impact on American society. And people grow up and go out into the world more lost than ever because of it. And so going back to this CNN report, they have this reporter here and there's like a narrative on this news report of shock and almost appall at what's about to happen here when they have this family from this pastor's church sit down and explain how they run their household.
Josh and Amy Prince, along with their 4 kids, moved here from Washington State.
Do you see Amy as your equal?
Yes and no, in the sense that we're both saved by grace. We're absolutely on equal footing. But we have very different purposes, God-given.
But do you see yourself as the head of the household, as the man?
He is the head of our household.
Yes,
and I do submit to him.
So like moving here was ultimately your decision.
Yes.
That's a great
example.
And so there's bound to be outrage over this still, because we've had decades now of our institutional education system teaching against stuff like this. And we've had decades now of a feminist movement spreading across America, telling women that their true freedom lies outside of the house and outside of these traditional values. But there is a growing and trending trad wife movement within the millennial and Gen Z generations. You see, the pendulum has swung so far to the left when it comes to the feminist freedom movement that now women are going out into the world and wondering what it would be like if the pendulum swung back to the other side of traditionalism. And so this is a BuzzFeed article of all articles. 21 reasons young women are embracing the trad wife phenomenon according to Gen Zers. And honestly, some of these are spot on. With one account here, female born in 2003 here, and love that younger women are finally advocating for traditionalism. Growing up, the only options I was ever told was that you must go to school and get a couple of degrees and put yourself into a career, but it never resonated with me, and I always received hate from peers whenever I said I didn't want to do that. With her finishing her thought saying, I have now wasted several years of my life pursuing an education that made me miserable until I found my boyfriend who has a stable enough career so that I can stay at home, do the cleaning, laundry, dishes, cooking, and caring for the dog, etc. I am happier than ever and can't wait for this to continue into marriage and children. I wish I knew this was an acceptable choice sooner instead of having people demean it as a life choice. She chose to remain anonymous. Another account from a woman, something about it is comforting, I guess. I used to be a very passionate workaholic journalist, but I saw so much despair and pain and loss, and it ruined me and my mental health. It was awful, and I have so much respect for people who can bear that pain and share it with the world. The tradwife trend almost reminds me to slow down, take in the little things, and get back to the stuff I enjoy, like cooking, baking, gardening, and children. She finishes her thought saying, I tried so hard to quiet that part of me for a while, but the traditional trend encourages me to embrace it. It's very feel-good from the surface, almost like Little House on the Prairie, especially with the world being what it is right now. It's nice to have an escape, and I find that in the tradwife trend. Signed, Holly. And there are so many more examples as you scroll down through here on their thoughts on the tradwife trend, some of them speaking out against it in this article, but a lot of them seem to be for it. And all of that, again, is to say nobody should be shocked by this movement or by this pastor or his church, or even offended by anything that's been said thus far. However, there is a part of this report that I think many would absolutely consider controversial right here.
Wilson says in his vision of a Christian society, women as individuals shouldn't be able to vote. His fellow pastors Jared Longshore and Toby Sumter agree.
In my ideal society, we would vote as households. And I would ordinarily be the one that would cast the vote, but I would cast the vote having discussed it with my household.
But what if there's your wife doesn't want to vote for the same
Right.
person as you?
Right. Well, then that's a great opportunity for a good discussion.
There are some who have gone so far as to say that they want the 19th Amendment repealed.
I would support that. And I'd support it on the basis that the atomization that comes with our current system is not good for humans.
Very controversial. And here's the thing with all of this. First of all, it used to be done this way as a one vote per household measurement. And so this wouldn't even be a movement so much about stripping away the rights for women to vote, but what it would be about would be going back to the traditional way of one vote per household, because back then the assumption was you dated and married somebody who shared most, if not all, of the same values as you. And so this was just a product of the nuclear family and of traditional values. It was unthinkable back then for a Christian to marry a non-Christian or for a Republican to marry a Democrat. You just didn't do that because it was inherently known then that by doing so, you were setting yourself up for failure within that marriage. These values are non-negotiable, or at least they're supposed to be. And so it shouldn't, in theory, be a problem for the household to only have one total vote, because the assumption would be a Christian Republican marries a Christian Republican, or an atheist Democrat marries an atheist Democrat. And therefore, they raise their children up to be as such that that's what they believe in as well. And so you only truthfully need one vote per household under circumstances like that. Now, that's the soft approach to all of this. However, there are harsh realities to this as well. There's absolutely no getting around the fact that this is a movement growing on social media, particularly amongst younger men. When you search repeal the 19th on X, literally the first thing that pops up is an X account called Repeal the 19th, with the description of the account saying the 19th Amendment was written by a virgin. You also have people placing Repeal the 19th in their description. Feminism has ruined the world. Women are DEII, delusional, emotional, erratic, irrational, and illogical. And then you scroll down and you just see a ton of memes about the 19th Amendment being repealed. I want the biggest mistake. not the blimp. Was that the Heisenberg blimp, the Titanic, the 19th Amendment, perfection. You have even women on X tweeting about repealing the 19th, about how some liberal women are making an excellent case for repealing the 19th. You also have a direct quote from George Orwell. He's a famous author, probably many of you know, especially if you're into conspiracy theories. His quote, "It was always the women and above all the young ones who were the most bigoted and adherents of the party, the swallowers of slogans." And you have yet again another woman on here posting this tweet, "Okay, we tried women's suffrage and discovered that their primary political concern is killing their own babies. Can we finally call this experiment failed and move on?" And so, yeah, the online culture and the social media culture is important to look at when it comes to this, because people are a little bit more ballsy online when it comes to speaking their opinions, since there's no face-to-face direct confrontation involved with that. And you will see, shockingly, a lot of women talking about repealing the 19th, let alone, like I said, the young millennial and especially the young Gen Z men who maybe are saying it more jokingly, but there's probably a hint of underlying seriousness when they joke about stuff. People do tend to joke about stuff that they are at least somewhat serious about, especially when it comes to controversial topics like this.
And now there's a monthly prayer service at the Pentagon, initiated by Hegseth, Wilson's highest level connection to the administration.
It's not organizationally tied to us, but it's the kind of thing we love to see.
For his part, Hegseth has publicly praised Wilson.
Now we're standing on the shoulders of a generation later, the Doug Wilsons and the others.
And as Wilson grows closer to the mainstream, the critics are also getting louder, accusing him and other Christian nationalists of wanting to create the dystopian world from The Handmaid's Tale, something he insists has never been his goal for society.
I'm not a white nationalist. I'm not a fascist. I'm not a racist. I'm not a misogynist.
How far off do you see a Christian nation, like a full-on Christian theocracy?
Oh, 250 years.
250 years.
Yeah, honestly, that's yes.
What you see. But you do think it will happen?
Yes, I do. We're not going to usher in anything ourselves. We're really genuinely pioneers.
John, we reached out to the Defense Department to better understand the relationship between Wilson and Hegseth, and a DoD spokesman said that Hegseth is a, quote, proud member of the network of churches founded by Pastor Wilson, and he also said that Hegseth, quote, very much appreciates many of Mr. Wilson's writings and teachings. John?
Pamela Brown, thank you so much. That's fascinating.
And so there you have it. Now, the title of this video, is Trump the reason behind all of this? Yes and no. I would argue before any of you right now that President Donald Trump is not a Christian nationalist in the truest sense of the form. However, what's going on with our culture is under President Donald Trump and under the MAGA movement and the conservatives now being in power, our culture is being reformed. It's swinging back in a lot of ways, and it's being molded back into a direction that, quite frankly, a lot of people voted for. And so it'll be fascinating to see how this all plays out, with Gen Zers, especially Gen Z men, becoming increasingly more conservative, as well as longing for a more traditional lifestyle once again. You know, we have so much going on in our society that's wrong, with dating apps ruining stuff and feminism and all this other stuff. People are getting tired of it. And so it'll be interesting to see, when this pendulum does inevitably swing back, what American society winds up looking like in the future. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe right now to American Advocates, especially if this is not your first time watching content on this channel. It's 100% free to subscribe. And if you don't click subscribe, I'm going to assume you're a non-traditional stay-at-home father with a low income and that your wife runs the show. So click that subscribe button and prove me wrong. And also, let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts and opinions are on this when it comes to all of this traditional movement, Pete Hegseth being tied in with this church, his controversial tattoos. What do you think the future of America looks like when it comes to this? Let me know down below, and thanks for watching.